Hello, and welcome to the Rise Up Buttercup Podcast, where we have one mission: to empower women across the world.
And I'm saying no way, I'm going my own way, and you can't stop me, 'cause I'm loving myself, oh no way, this is my own way, and you can't stop me, 'cause I'm loving myself.
Hello, my friend, and welcome to another episode of the Rise Up Buttercup Podcast. I am your host, Amy Gerhartz. If you're new here, I have certifications in leadership, neurolinguistic programming, hypnosis, hypnotherapy, and I also have a company called A Higher Way of Living, where I do coaching for women on their confidence, their communication skills, their leadership skills, all to empower them to operate at a higher level in their lives. And today, I am, first of all, on my very first cup of coffee. So go ahead and grab something to drink and sit down, get comfortable. Join me today on this conversation around decision making. And it is, I think, almost 11 a.m. where I'm at right now. And so I'm a little late for my first cup of coffee, but there's a reason. There's a reason I'm a little behind on my caffeine today. And that's because I had a wonderful call this morning. I've been doing work all morning and had a great call with a friend of mine who was telling me a story about his daughter who is about to finish up her freshman year of college. And for those of you who went to college, or even if you didn't go to college, you know that transitional part of life when you are going from living at home to being independent and being on your own is a really scary phase of life, right? It's exciting, it's scary, it's overwhelming, it's fun. And there's so many different emotions that come up with this period of living. And he was telling me that she's having this moment that she's going through where it's her freshman year, or finishing up her freshman year, and she's not sure if she's made the right decision. She's not sure if she's picked the right major. She's not sure that's what she really wants to do. And so many of her friends are in the same space of not knowing if they have done the right thing or if it is the right decision. And it brought up this conversation that I've had many, many times with many people, many clients. I had a woman just ask me this question about decision making at a conference I was speaking at. And I've had so many people struggle with making decisions, and myself included. I used to struggle with making decisions all of the time because there was so much anxiety that would come up when it came to decisions. And so I thought in my mind, that's a good podcast episode. This is a good topic to chat about today of how do we overcome the anxiety of decision making, and how do we start to push forward and take action on something so that we can figure out whether or not it is the right decision for us. Now, I want to preface this with I am not a counselor or a therapist. So when it comes to anxiety or general anxiety disorders, I am not here to diagnose anyone or to cure or heal anyone of that. As a coach, my job is to give certain tools and tips on how to take action moving forward. So if you are someone who struggles with general anxiety disorder or you are diagnosed with anxiety, bring these topics up with your counselor or your therapist and see if they could apply to your specific situation. And for those of us who do not struggle with anxiety on a clinical level, I think the tips that I'm going to teach you today could be really beneficial to just calming some of the nerves and the, light anxiety, at least in my experience, that I get when it comes to making decisions. So first, let's talk about this question: am I making the right decision? Because I hear this all of the time. Am I making the right decision? We want the answers all of the time. If I had a roadmap to my life, I would be a happy camper because I would never question things. I would follow the roadmap. And actually, that's a little bit of a lie. I would probably write my own map to the roadmap because that's just the type of person that I am. But life would be, in general, a lot easier if we had all the answers to our lives, right? And so this question of, am I making the right decision, is actually an interesting question because I think we all want the answers to something that hasn't actually happened yet. And so what I think the real question is not, am I making the right decision? But further underneath that of, am I making the wrong decision? Because I think when it comes to paralysis and us not taking any action at all, when we freeze, when we don't take action, in my experience, that comes from fear. Fear of making the wrong decision. Fear that I'm going to get stuck in a relationship or a job or a situation or an apartment or a house or anything that could end up being a terrible situation. We all carry so much fear of the unknown. At least I know that I do. At least I know my clients do. And I don't know anybody that doesn't experience fear. If you know someone who's never afraid, by all means, send them my way. I would love to have a conversation with them. But I think the question is not, am I making the right decision? But it's, am I making the wrong decision? Because that comes from a place of fear. That is where the anxiety comes in. We rarely get anxiety when we know that we're making the right decision. We rarely get anxiety when we are confident in ourselves and confident in the things that we're doing. For me anyway, anxiety comes from a fear. It comes from the unknown. It comes from the questioning of the what if. And what I tend to do, and what I've noticed a lot of my clients do, is we start spiraling down the rabbit hole of, oh my gosh, my life is ending. The world is ending. The sky is falling, right? This is the worst decision I could ever make. And it's this, we start layering in fear on top of fear, on top of fear, on top of fear. And we spiral down this rabbit hole until one decision that could potentially be a really simple little decision of even something as simple of, do I want to date this person or not? Or do I want to go to school here or go to school here? Like, they seem like big decisions, but at the end of the day, it's just a decision. But we turn this into this, oh my gosh, I'm going to get stuck here forever feeling, right? And a lot of my coaching in my one-on-one coaching programs, and by the way, listener, if you're listening to this and you're curious about the coaching that I do, if you want more one-on-one coaching, you can always reach out to me anytime at A Higher Way of Living. You can comment on this YouTube video. You can message me through the podcast. You can go to ahigherwayofliving.com and sign up for our mailing list. There's a contact form there too. So I don't want you to think that if you want to learn more that you can't. I'm always here. I'm always open to discussing further. But you'll hear me talk a lot in my coaching about separating feeling from fact. What is feeling? What is fact? And this is actually something I did learn in therapy. I have a wonderful therapist, Alicia. If you're listening to this, hey girl, I've been working with her for years and I've learned so much from her. I learned so much from my coaching certifications as well. But when we can separate our feeling from fact, then we can see things a little bit more objectively. So a lot of the anxiety, a lot of the overwhelm I found that comes along with decision making is really based in a feeling. It's a feeling and a fear of something, once again, that has not happened yet. So if we know that it hasn't happened yet, how do we start taking action to figure out, is this the right decision? Is this a wrong decision? So the first thing, listener, I'd love to pose is this idea for you, and it might take a minute to sink in. So just bear with me here. I want to pose out a concept. I like these what if concepts in my coaching. What if there are no right or wrong decisions? What if they're just decisions? And every decision leads us to another decision. So come along on this journey with me of what would happen if every decision was just a neutral decision? What if after we make a decision, then we get to assign whether something's good or bad or right or wrong? Because we're not actually going to know if a decision is right for us or wrong for us, or good for us, or bad for us, until we actually make the decision. So decisions in general, what if they get to be in a state of neutrality? What if they're neutral? What if they're not good? What if they're not bad? What if it's just a decision? And so when it comes to every decision in your life, what if it's just a decision? And then once you pick a decision, you make the decision, you take action on the decision, then you'll be able to figure out and navigate, was this the right decision or was this the wrong decision? Because the thing is, when it comes to the anxiety and the paralysis, you are never, ever going to know if something was right or wrong until you take movement. Until you take some sort of action, you're never going to be able to identify if this was right or wrong because you can't predict the future. So the movement is where I want to focus in next. First, what if everything gets to be neutral, right? What if every decision is just a decision? It's just a decision. Do I want pasta? Do I want tacos? Do I want to date this person? Do I want to date that person? Do I want to have this job? Do I want to have that job? And I'm not trying to downplay it or dismiss anything that you might be experiencing or having to make a decision on right now, because I know there are some very important decisions out there. But what I want to stress with this is that when you get to a state of neutrality, you're able to look at things a little bit more objectively. You're able to pick a decision from a place of neutrality. And then after you take movement, after you pick that decision and make a decision, then you can take movement on that decision. So that's the second step of this. First, come to a place of neutrality, then take movement. And then once you've taken movement on that decision, then you can determine, after you've started to take movement, whether or not this was good for you or not so good for you, whether it was the right decision or the wrong decision. And by the way, I'm not saying don't plan things out ahead of time. I'm not saying don't do research. I'm not saying being willy-nilly with your decision making. If you know somebody that's done something before that you're struggling to make a decision on, maybe ask for some counsel. Ask for advice, maybe do some research, maybe get on Google or YouTube or wherever to figure out what's the best way I can make this decision. That's a whole other different podcast. But when it comes to the anxiety of decision making in general, there are so many things we can do to support us in taking action. First, coming to a space of neutrality. Second, taking action, because here's the cool thing about taking action. Whenever you take any sort of movement whatsoever, if you are in a space of fear, anxiety, or you're treading water internally is a coaching term. If you just feel like you're internally treading water, time you take any sort of movement, you're shifting your mental focus away from that anxiety and stress. You're shifting your mental focus onto the action, which helps you to push through that anxiety, that helps you to get to that next space. So first, see if you can come to a place of neutrality of decisions are just decisions. I'm just going to make a decision, and then I'll figure out whether it's the right or wrong decision for me or the good or bad decision. Then I'm going to take some sort of movement. And then when you are in movement, as I said, you're going to begin to figure this out, and you're going to be able to start making better decisions. More decisions lead to more decisions moving forward. And here's the key. Because once again, remember how I told you we all go down this rabbit hole? Well, let me rephrase that. The people I know go down the rabbit hole. I've gone down the rabbit hole. It's possible, listener, you might go down that rabbit hole. But remember when I said you go down that rabbit hole of this is going to be it. This is final. This next thing is going to be so important for you on this journey. If you ever make a decision and you're not happy with that decision, you can always change your mind. Ooh, going to say that again. If you ever make a decision and you are not happy with that decision, you can always change your mind. Decisions are not final. Now, it doesn't mean decisions don't have consequences. It doesn't mean that there aren't, things that byproducts of making decisions that happen. But decisions themselves are not final. If you start a job and you don't like the job and you realize, okay, I'm going to get neutral. I'm going to start this job. I get halfway down. I'm starting to make these movements in my life. And I realize this isn't really the job I like. Then you can make a plan to find a different job. You can always pick a different job. You can always pick a different relationship. If things were final, people would never get divorced. They would never change companies. We would never switch schools. We would never move. We would never do things, all the things in our lives, if every decision was a final decision. So I think it's really important to remove the idea that every decision you make is a final decision. Create more of an open concept for the decisions that you make. And I'm not saying, once again, don't commit to things, because it's important to live in integrity and commit to some of the things that you choose to commit to, but you can change your mind. Listener, very few decisions are final, and those are the ones where usually people are no longer here anymore. Very few decisions are final. Every single decision can be shifted and changed. You are ultimately in control of your life. And if you look at the decisions you make from a place of neutrality and say, all right, I'm going to do my research, I'm going to plan, but I'm not going to sit in the planning. I'm not going to sit in the anxiety. I'm going to be proactive with this. And I'm going to allow myself just to take action, just to take some sort of movement. Then I'll be able to figure out if this was the right move or the wrong move. I have changed my mind in my life so many different times. I've lived in plenty of different cities. I have shifted and evolved as a human being. And the thing is, we're supposed to. We're supposed to continually grow and evolve. Oh my gosh, to go back to the conversation with my friend this morning and his daughter, who's a freshman, questioning whether or not she picked the right career field or whatnot. We put so much pressure as a society on kids. And she's not a kid, she's a young adult. But we put so much pressure on young adults to figure out what they want to do with their lives from a very young age. And everyone listening to this that's over the age of 30 knows that most people don't ever really follow a career path that's their degree. Most people end up shifting jobs over and over and over again to figure out what works best for them. And so it's okay to release the pressure that you're putting on yourself potentially when it comes to decisions and just take some sort of movement, because you can always change your mind. You can always change your mind. And so, listener, I hope that supports you today. I hope it gives you a little bit of insight on ways to overcome some anxiety and the fear that comes with decision making. Little tip I want to teach you that I learned from my therapist. When you can take anxiety and you can identify the fear with anxiety, just like we talked about in this podcast, it is not, am I making the right decision? It's, am I making the wrong decision? It's fear of making the wrong decision. When you can identify that, then you can make a plan to combat it. And that was a huge, powerful lesson I learned in therapy as well, is that you can take that anxiety, push it into a fear. And then when you have a fear, you can make a plan. All right, well, I'm afraid that, what happens if I get this job and I end up not liking the job or liking the people I work with? All right, what's my plan? I just make a plan to get another job, or I make a plan to ask the right questions before I accept the job. There are so many things we can do, but I really think if you release the pressure off of yourself when it comes to making decisions, you're going to find life to be so much more enjoyable, because everything gets to be neutral and everything gets to just be a decision. It's just making a decision. Once again, do I want pasta? Do I want tacos? Do I want to go to school here? Do I want to go to school here? Do I want to date this person? Do I want to date that person? And then after you make the decision and you take action and you shift your focus away from the anxiety, then you're going to figure out the answers. And I know that is so difficult to digest sometimes, because we are in a society where we all want the answers right now. I wish I had a roadmap for my life, but we're sort of designing the map as we go. So I hope once again that supports you today. Feel free to click on the free Creating Instant Confidence guide in the notes description for this. Get in touch with me and my company if you're interested in any sort of coaching. I also do keynote speaking and workshops for corporate as well, and would love to have that conversation with you. And finally, remember that you are one of a kind and absolutely worth it. And I'll see you next time.